Hello, this is Matthew Chan and
Wes Weaver.
And welcome to another episode of the TurnKey Investors TV show. Now, today what we're going to talk about is the Investors Roundtable. And in the last episode, I did tell you we we're going to talk about the Investors Roundtable, but I didn't tell you what it was all about. Well, it's something that what Wes and I did back in 2007. And in remembering, it ran from February through October. It was a very low-key project. It was certainly not broadcast to the world at large. It was very much community-based. And what we did, Wes and I did, was we took a core of local would-be investors, beginning investors that really wanted to make something happen. And we said that if we given the opportunity, we could mold these people and teach these people and motivate them into actually doing something and making it happen successfully. And I'm happy to say that we were successful. We have a very high success rate.
Yeah, I was very amazed, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and as a matter of fact, you know, a lot of them became our friends and even business associates. I mean, that's how much of a success that it was. And I will tell you that Wes and I took a very hands-on approach. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is we're kind of throwing it out there. Not that we're going to ever do the Investors Roundtable as we did it back in 2007. But today with technology, with videos and social media and blogs and Facebook, it's way easier for us to connect with people and perhaps help other people. So, but it was an interesting project. Now, another reason why I want to tell you is the origins of the story. Now, as Wes, in a previous episode, we talked about, Wes talked about his experience recently going to a local real estate club meeting. Well, we're going to go back to that story, that premise again. Early on, the reason why Wes and I met is because there was no real estate club.
Yeah.
And there was none at that time, back in 2001. I think there were attempts that were made, but it was never held together.
Right.
So I said, okay, you know, I want to meet other like-minded people. I'm going to go advertise in the paper and so forth. So I actually did that like twice. You know, we would have the group for a little while, then we would disband. Mm-hmm. Then we'd have it a while, then it'd disband. Right. Well, this one, the Investors Roundtable, prior to us calling, wasn't really meant to be us together. We were actually going to participate with the existing group, which is based out of Atlanta. And so they had this core group, and we just thought we'd participate. And by that time, Wes and I had become known for what we were doing. You know, we had acquired a good number of properties. We were cash flowing. We were using very innovative marketing techniques. So we were making our name for ourselves with ownerfinancehomes.com. And people were interested in what we were doing, lease options, and some of the things we were doing, and we were happy to share. Mm-hmm. And further, because it was a real estate club event, the intent was we were going to charge a nominal fee, and I was more than happy to donate. I think the majority was going to be donated to the club because the club needed some money. So I think that's fine. You know, we'd have a little bit of fun at it. People would get some education. There'd be some money in the club. I don't remember the exact specifics, but somehow the logistics of the event fell apart. And the leader at the time, the president at the time, and I, it became difficult because I said to him, I said, you know, you're not acting like a president. You're the president of the club. Make a decision. I mean, we have a bump, we can do this, but, you know, and he wanted to go to the committee, and I just, and here all I was trying to do was do a one-day workshop. It was going to be some, you know, inexpensive fee, $40, $50 or something. And it had to go back to committee, and it had to be discussed, like what day we're going to do this and all this stuff. I was like, oh, for God's sake, it's a weekend class or something. It is not a big deal. Long story short, I couldn't get in the budge, and I just said, forget it. I said, you know what, this is stupid.
Right.
And plus, if you remember, we had been to the meetings, and you know how those meetings go.
Right.
You go, there's an occasional person pitching,
right.
You talk about stuff, and another month goes by.
Yeah.
and this would happen, and so the months would just burn by.
Right, and that's kind of the same what you'll maybe find today that goes on. I mean, you go and you have a group of people who you may have a group of 10 people that have 5 houses between all of them, and they want to talk about lead-based paint and how lead-based paint affects investors.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, but if you don't have any property, you don't need to be given a hill of beans about lead-based paint.
And they're always talking about how you have to do diligence. I was like, you know what? You only got one property. How much can you lose?
Right.
Right. I mean, how much due diligence do you need?
Right.
If you buy in a decent neighborhood, and any idiot that lives in it knows where the decent neighborhoods are,
right.
where the crime rate is. But
part of the Investors Roundtable, what we wanted to do was kind of take the same concept of a real estate group and light a fire under them and see what people could actually do. So, if you take, not the same people, but similar type people that are no more smarter than, the other people who are in the other group, and if you give them the right tools, the right know-how, like we talked about in the previous segment, but yet you kind of hold their feet to the fire, what can they do? And let me tell you what, I mean, the results, I was astounded by.
Well, for better or for worse, I guess I'll have to admit to this, is that the students were lived under a constant level of threat.
Right, yeah.
And the threat was that the money you were paying, I think it was like $35, or actually it started like $25 for a session.
Right.
Okay, it was like 3 hours, we'd come in prepared with all kinds of stuff. But we told them, look, we're going to give you all the support. We gave them our phone numbers. Mm-hmm. We gave them our email addresses. They could call us. So it wasn't just the $25 for the session. And we had food. It went, so we had soft drinks.
Yeah.
We had Martha, our office manager, so she was doing this after hours. So we really made this an event.
We were clearly milking them and living large on them. That's what we're trying to say. I mean, it was clear what our agenda was for.
Right. Well, we were getting rich at just $25 per session. And anyway, and not only did we not do this once a month.
Right.
Bullshit.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry. We said we're going to meet every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you missed too many meetings, you were going to be kicked out of the round table. So there was the outside of the round table where there were spectators, and there was the inside the round table. And we wouldn't accommodate anybody on the outside.
Right.
You're just a spectator. You don't get to talk.
Right.
You just get to listen and learn. And if you like it, you stay in. And if there was any slots, you just have to wait your turn until someone got booted out from the inside.
Right. There was no vote. This was a dictatorship.
Yes, it was a dictatorship. And I made it very clear that if I did not have fun, you had to pay me, but I also had to have fun, and you had to do the work. If you didn't do the work, you were going to get kicked out. I didn't want your money anymore, and somebody else would come into the slot.
Right.
So there you go. Doesn't that sound so inspiring? Doesn't that just make you want to die for our coaching services?
But the interesting dynamics that I found was that when you help people to the standards, the homework, that they knew that not only were we holding them accountable, but the other people in the group were holding them accountable. So when they came back, I mean, they were fired up. They were ready to go.
Well, and the thing about it is that's true, because if there was too many people that didn't fail, I was just going to disband the thing.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't enough. I mean, you couldn't, so you had people, the innocents, they weren't totally removed. They couldn't just do their homework. They had to kind of make sure the other people didn't screw it up for everybody.
I mean, on the same level, like we talked about in another episode about, not thinking you're smart enough or self-confidence. I mean, in the same note, I mean, a lot of times I wish I had a coach, saying, this is what you got to do, Wes. This is the homework you got to bring me. And if you don't, these are the consequences. I mean, probably I would be better off in a different situation, if I had that. So it was good. Yeah.
Now, what else happened? Oh, I'm going to talk about some of the tense situations. There were a couple of tense situations. There was one lady in the beginning. She was actually very nice, fairly knowledgeable, and I really liked her, okay? But going into this thing, my mission was very clear. I was not going to tolerate a whole bunch. I couldn't just make an exception for somebody to do nothing. I mean, didn't mean that I wouldn't give them some latitude, because everybody's situation is different. But her situation was, she was married to this guy, and apparently she couldn't do very much without him. Everything that would run by her is, well, he has to approve it. And I said, well, I'm not a marriage counselor. I'm just telling you what you've got to do. If you want to be in this roundtable, you've got to do the homework. You've got to do the assignment. You've got to do the results. If you're worried that your husband isn't going to approve or something, maybe he should come in and sit in on a session, and see what's going on. But what am I supposed to say? I mean, am I supposed to say, well, you got to do this despite your husband? I mean, that's a whole marital thing.
Right.
That is something I was not going to get myself into.
Right.
I mean, what do you say to somebody like that?
What I say is, you're out, person in the back of the room, you're in, let's move on. I mean, really.
Well, you know what? That's what ended up happening.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a little bit angry with me, and I just said, this isn't going to work.
Right. Yeah.
This isn't going to work. I can't spend all my time discussing, there was I think there was 6 people in the beginning, and we can't spend all our time talking about what your husband's going to think. If you got homework, you got to figure out some way to do this by the next 2 weeks. If you need more time or need an exception, we'll try to work on it.
Right.
But I can't keep trying to second guess what your husband might or might not like.
Right.
So anyway, moving on. The whole point is there was a high degree of accountability, and our emphasis was portfolio building. We told everybody, there were people that came. We weren't going to teach people how to rehab.
Right.
We weren't going to touch people with wholesaling.
Right.
If you needed quick cash, this wasn't the place to be. And if you remember, there were people that did come and go.
Yeah,
they sit for a meeting, and they go.
And that was fine. Yeah, hey, we're not all things to all people. So,
that is absolutely right.
If we're not serving the dishes that they wanted to eat, I mean, they need to go somewhere else.
Exactly. But we were bound and determined to. We told them in the beginning that it was a finite time. I mean, we weren't going to do this forever and ever.
Right.
I mean, after some point, you've got enough information. You've got to go do it, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so, anyway, so what were some of the highlights that you remembered? I mean, obviously, I kind of told the story, but what were some of the things that you noticed that I may not have noticed?
I mean, one thing I remember is one of the assignments that they had was they had to go out and I think analyze 3 or 4 deals, and they had to come back and pitch us.
Oh yeah.
That was a fun one for me because we got to sit.
Really? You enjoyed critiquing them, huh?
Well, I mean, it wasn't necessarily critiquing them. I mean, it was to coach them. It was coaching them, and it was coaching them to whether you're pitching another investor or if you're just how to analyze a deal. And so I remember them coming back, and I mean, I remember them just stumbling over the same numbers that I stumbled over in the beginning. And so, I mean, to me, that was. Because that was kind of that's where the rubber meets the road. I mean, you can teach them all the day long, but when they had to bring back actual houses that were for sale, and I think in a couple of cases they even had to make offers, I believe, on some of them. So when they had to go through the emotional exercise of signing their name on a contract and come back saying, okay, well, I made this offer. To me that was the fun part, is seeing them go through that emotion, exercising that muscle, and then seeing them cross the bridge on the other side.
Now, you weren't there, but I also sent these guys as a group. I mean, they didn't have to go together, but they ended up just going as a group. They went to eviction court. I was like, you know what? Instead of hearing what evictions are all about in a theoretical sense, I said, you know what? Let's just go to Columbus downtown. They meet. I couldn't remember what day it was. It was like Tuesday or Wednesday at a certain time. And I hadn't planned on going, but at the last minute, I had a little bit of time. And I was just like, hey, you guys at the courthouse? It's like, I'm coming in with you guys. I want to make sure, see if you guys learn. And they were there. I mean, I think everybody except for one person made it, and they got to see live for themselves what an eviction was all about. They heard the case, they saw the judge, and it really took the mystery out. It takes the mystery out, because what I find is everything is so theoretical in these courses. They say, well, you should do this, do that. And in this local environment, I mean, giving a kick in the rear end to get down there and just see for yourself, drive the neighborhoods.
Right. And you may find that you're a person that's good at being self-motivated, that you may find that yourself, that you'll go to the eviction court yourself, without having someone push you. But if you're like me and maybe even a lot of other people, you may have some self-motivation, but you need a little kick in the pants sometimes. I mean, look for people to hold you accountable, even if it's someone that's not like Matt and I were leaders to them. We were kind of their mentor, so to speak, on some level. So even if it's not a mentor, find other peers that you can say, hey, we're going along this journey together. Let's hold ourselves accountable, because time. I mean, as you know, the years are going to click by very quickly, and the years are either going to click by with you doing something, and at the end of the year you've got some assets or you've got something to show for, or the years are going to click by and you're going to say, man, I really haven't really made much progress. And so if you need someone to hold you accountable, you need that, kick in the pants. I mean, look for that. Don't avoid it. I would say look for it.
Okay, very good. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome back to the show. Wes couldn't join us for this particular segment, but I'm proud to introduce my friend Tony, who will be the co-host of this segment. And more importantly, Tony has agreed to be co-host of the TurnKey Investor Show going forward, the filling in when Wes can't be. So welcome to the show, Tony.
Well, I'm really excited to be here, Matthew. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this incredible venture that you and Wes got started, talking about the Investors Roundtable and the many different things we've done as part of the turnkey investing effort.
Well, I don't want you to be too impressed, Tony. I mean, I guess I didn't tell you beforehand. We only have a viewership of 3 people. So you 3 people don't get it. He's easily impressed. So you 3's got to like him.
Well, I'm sure I'm going to up your ratings then. Huh?
Yeah, that's true.
Is that part of what I'm
That's exactly why you were brought in here. Because if I didn't bring you in here, I am somewhat concerned my viewership won't go past 10. So anyway. But anyhow, I'm really happy you decided to jump, come in the middle of this episode, which you have. And you saw in the last segment how Wes and I discussed the Investors Roundtable.
Right.
And this was back, of course, in 2007. And I think it's especially appropriate that you come in this episode because you were a member of the Investors Roundtable.
Yes, I was. In terms of, I heard how you said that the whole idea of what became the Investors Roundtable got started, and I was one of the people who was a member of that organization that you described, met and got pitches and things like that. But even prior to that, I had not bought into anyone's program. I mean, there are a lot of gurus out there, but I've got a library of maybe 25 different real estate investment books.
Right.
I had actually had someone give me a program from a very often advertised guru. I'll use that. And
Was it Carlton Sheets?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, okay. All right. There's no problem there. I saw.
Hey,
we're okay with that because there's so many of us that saw Carlton Sheets.
Somebody actually gave me Carlton's whole system. Maybe it was a few weeks before I came to the first session, and but what I wanted to do was to actually get engaged in something that was going to put me in the company of people who were where I was, which was someone who had not yet done a deal, and and everything that came as a part of the experience with the Investors Roundtable was exactly what I was looking for, and it got me started in acquiring properties and certainly established a relationship that has gone far beyond the training that we were involved in.
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
Well, since you kind of brought it up, I want you to share what your thoughts were prior to joining the Investors Roundtable with this group. And the only reason why I want to bring that up is my feeling is that there was times you were met, it was like once a month, you would get together, and the thing about it is every month would come and go. And I always felt like very little was accomplished. And the thing about Wes and I is the more experienced you are, the more you we're not looking for like huge leaps and bounds for the knowledge, but we're still looking for something, a nugget, so it's not a waste of our time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah,
and
I understand.
And we just sort of got disheartened after a while, and of course, if you recall, when I told the story, I was actually trying to do a workshop. It was just one day. I figured it was down and dirty, me teaching the meat and potatoes without all the hoopla, and it was becoming just such a difficult proposition. It had to be a committee.
Well,
and
it
just killed me.
Let me ask you this question before I respond to what you're asking me. How did it go from a workshop to become the Investors Roundtable? I mean, it was your idea to do the workshop, but then it was also your idea.
Well, if I recall, Tony, it didn't really become the Investors Roundtable right away. I wanted to make this workshop happen, and the president just felt uncomfortable. But quite honestly, he had no spine. So that's really the bottom line. And I wanted to make that because I knew there was a few people, and there was like 6 to 8 of you that day that showed up, and so. But at the end of that, I think you know, I think all of you were kind of hungry, and I got some good vibes that you liked us, you know, Wes and I, as a pair. And that's when.
I'm glad you said as a pair.
I get no respect. All right, this is the last, also the last episode Tony will be co-hosting.
You must get to be open and honest. He makes a first impression.
Yeah, yes I did. Oh yeah, so I used a lot of colorful language that day too, if I remember. But yeah, that's really what it. Yeah, that was where the idea came from. After during that day, I was like, you know what? Let's go see if we can't get these guys going.
Well, let me get into what you were asking me. Now, the thing that appealed to me, and obviously this is not universal commentary, was that most people will always benefit more from training than strictly education.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is I had read everything. I mean, there was almost nothing new that anybody would be able to tell me.
Right.
But to actually put me in a position where I'm expected to do it is the difference between training and education. Training is you have to demonstrate a level of competency by somebody who can either evaluate you and from there correct you in your because your actions are the manifestation of some logic. So in other words, what I was thinking and then it translates into doing, and being able to get feedback. Is that the right thing? Did I do it on a scale of 1 to 10? Did I do an 8 or did I do a 3? Because as you would imagine, all the different concepts in real estate investing are layered on top of each other. You know, it's a cumulative body of knowledge that translates into a series of abilities that once you understand them and you're able to do them, then you have a level of competency that's going to lead to success. And so going back to the difference between going to the monthly meetings with the real estate group, they were disjointed for one. There was no progression.
Yeah, there was very little continuity.
And the other thing is, in that particular group, which was very different from what we had with the Investors Roundtable, is you had people who had 20, 30, 40 properties. We had one guy who owned one of the franchises, who owned dozens, had a lot of support and resources. And then you had people who were even newer than I was, hadn't read a book. And then, of course, you had a bunch of people like me who had read books and stuff like that. So
That's right.
There was not anything that really was practical any more so than saying, okay, you got freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors in college all in the same class. Some people are getting nothing from it. It's over some people's head that might be perfectly targeted for a small segment. So the Investors Roundtable was perfect for my needs, and it took me along a path with experienced people, a set of expectations, and it had a curriculum, so to speak, that helped me to understand where I was going, even if I didn't quite understand sometimes how I was going to get there.
Well, the curriculum was somewhat spontaneous because, impartial.
But no, what you told us is, in the end, you're going to buy a property.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And I had to gauge where you guys were at, and so that's what happened. So I want to get into the actual experience of it. Okay. So the thing about it is, I held people to an extremely high level of accountability. I mean, to the point where I was threatening you guys every week. I was threatening to disband the group if you guys weren't going to do your homework, or I would almost berate you guys. So how did you guys feel? How did you feel?
Almost berate us.
Okay, I berated you. So how did you feel going through that? I mean, why did you guys even put up with it? Is it because you guys were so desperate? I think there was nobody else you could find?
Well, let me describe for our viewers. Hopefully we're up from 3 already. But let me describe the composition of the group. Now, you referred to one of the members who didn't sustain participation. But about half of us, as my memory serves, have been in the military.
Wow.
I mean,
military? Let me see.
At least 3 of them that come to mind I know have been in the military.
Okay.
To me, it was something akin, not quite as extreme from a physical standpoint, but at least it had that feel of 2 things that I really feel that I flourished in 2 environments. One was going through officer basic training, and the other was playing sports. I played high school.
So you're accustomed to being.
and college sports. So from the standpoint of someone, what do you call it, threatening, it's just pushing the macho buttons to say, can you get the job done? And I mean, from the standpoint, you're part of a group of peers.
Yeah.
One, you want to outperform your peers, but at the same time, even if it doesn't always feel welcomed in terms of presentation, you know that the ethic behind this is to make you push toward successful execution.
That is true.
And I don't think that you pulled it off in such a manner that anybody really took it personally. They didn't miss the message in the midst of the presentation. They got the message and I would say that it was effective because of that.
Well, good.
Because,
I appreciate
like I said,
that.
it was uniformly stated up front that, I don't need to do this.
That's exactly it.
My purpose and passion for this effort is to see you guys successfully invest in real estate.
That's exactly it. And you know what? The part of the thing is because I'm also fighting the stigma of the real estate training business, which I feel has traditionally been gotten sleazy. Not everybody, but it got to be a little bit of a sleazy business, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing the show. I've written my own books and so forth. So I really, I think there's value that can be given, but I don't think you have to engage in these little tactics. And the bottom line is, even though I did solicit, I guess tuition, for lack of a better word, I definitely was going to make sure that everybody knew that just because you paid tuition didn't mean that I had to take it.
Right.
I mean, you could be uninvited. You would be given the opportunity to keep your tuition,
right,
and not come to the meetings anymore.
Well, and I think there was a level of genius in the sense that it was so nominal that we knew that. I mean, literally. Tell you guys. If it were me, it would have been much more. But the thing is that you had snacks. You had your assistant there. You really set up for everybody to be there. From the standpoint, there weren't that many others in the first place. Return on time would have been, it was not met. So from the standpoint, what you gave us in value way far exceeded what it is that we were paying for if the money were an issue. But the valuable part of that is that we knew that for what it is we were putting in the cup, that, you walk away if you didn't see what you wanted to get in terms of a return, in terms of our advancement, our improvement, our commitment to becoming successful. To me, and I'm sure I speak for the others, what we saw was our becoming successful was the payday that you were looking for in the end. And I think that added to, when I say the genius, of us wanting to live up to those expectations, as you said. It's almost like a parent. You don't pay a parent.
Right.
And
we did have some real expenses and things like that, like my office manager Martha. She didn't have to stay after hours, but I had to compensate her for hanging out and helping us set up, and obviously there was equipment and there were some expenses because I wanted to be kind of us to be in a bubble. Mm-hmm. I was implementing a vision that I didn't see being carried out.
That's true.
And really, part of it is if I took the money, and part of the benefit that you guys got, and in many ways it was a small window of opportunity, is I was kind of pissed at this other club. And I was going to show them. So I didn't want to charge something that was extravagantly more than what they were doing. But I was going to prove to them that we could run this meeting, but not only run this meeting, but actually do something productive. Mm-hmm. Not straggle month after month after month. It was going to be, we were going to hop. And it was every 2 weeks, man, come back in here and let's go, what'd you guys do? And you had to present and all that stuff. So, well, you were one of the star students, and I guess that's why he ended up being here. Because he is a success story. He did go out and make something happen during the time of the training. Now, I will tell you, the training was it didn't even make a year.
No.
Yeah, I think it started somewhere in the end of February and it ended somewhere in October, somewhere there.
Right. And that was, I guess, what we called Investors Roundtable. And then we, as a group, loving Matthew and Wes so much, we insisted that we carry on into what we called Investors Roundtable 2, but it was a different, it was more of a, I guess, support group where we all interacted on what we were doing. But as far as the initial, what I'll call the basic training phase, It was about February to October, my memory.
Yeah, that was.
Occurs
Well,
with-
very good.
Yeah.
So, what other experiences do you feel about the Investors Roundtable that was beneficial or that was memorable?
Memorable. Well, in one of the previous episodes, you talked about going to the courthouse and
Yes.
actually sitting through the evictions. And I would just tell any of the viewers who are serious about real estate investing, you know, most of, and this is one of the things I told Matthew, and I'll make a short comment about it. Whenever you see an infomercial, get in the many solicitations and things that you get, you know, via the internet mostly nowadays, you can make millions, everything's easy, all you gotta do is follow the systems and money rolls in. And I think one of the things that keeps people from becoming real estate entrepreneurs, real estate investors is it's not even in the back of their minds. You know, one thing keeps just pinging on the greed button and you already wanna get involved, but something on the other side of that button is the other button that says, like, most people viewing this might not be old enough to remember Lost in Space, but the robot.
Oh, yeah. I like
Danger,
Lost in
danger,
Space.
Will Robinson, danger, danger. And you're kind of caught between this, well, they make it sound so easy, they're going to help me, and something just seems too easy for me to even step into the water. So going to the courthouse was actually a connection of, okay, so here's how this piece works. I mean, it was very tangible, and we went there as a group. So after the experience, we all talked about it. And that was one of those things that took a lot of fear away that's not specifically related to eviction, but to make me realize that, you know, there's systems and things out here, and what Matthew was telling us is some of the things that stop some people because they don't understand it. You know, there's actually methods and tactics and techniques that are here to help you. And he's making all those resources available through himself in his training. So that was one thing. I mean, that was probably the first thing that just really was special to me. The other, and these aren't in any particular order, was when you challenged us to actually go out and look at properties. I mean,
Yes.
from the standpoint, remember.
And you had to pitch us.
Well, this is before the pitch. We
Oh,
had to
okay.
actually go out, view properties, you know, like you and Wes had a couple. We had to go pull up the information in the deeds, in the
Oh,
court
okay.
records.
Yeah, yes.
And all that
Oh, you have a
stuff.
very good memory. I forgot about that.
Well, the thing was, you know, you learned how to research
Yes.
and get certain information about the properties will be fundamental to determining what you want to offer, doing comparable assessments of values, those kind of things. And then, again, the pitching, where we had to go out and actually find the properties that we thought would be good investments. And we had to put together a proposal and present that from the standpoint of, we were presenting this to Wes and Matthew as investors, and whatever appeal for capital or credit we wanted to get engaged in us taking down that deal, we had to make a financial case for that and a managerial case for that. And that was an entertaining couple of evenings, if I remember. Because, man, they tore us up. But, you know, there's
In a
nothing.
loving way.
In a loving way.
Or
but,
maybe semi-loving.
you know, one thing that I've heard you say in a whole nother setting is most people won't tell you when you're wrong. They'll just ignore you. And
That's
you'll
true.
wander off ignorant to the fact that you really screwed up and without you knowing it, embarrassed yourself. And to think that there are some brave souls who go out there without the benefit of an experience like that, and they think it doesn't work for them because what they got in feedback was just silence. They didn't get someone saying, well, here's why this wouldn't work. Here's what you need to consider. All the different inputs that would definitely change. If you change those inputs, you get a different output. That was like one of those capstone moments, but I couldn't neglect those other ones because, again, people can go out and buy real estate. But is it going to be a profitable relationship between you and the property? Is it going to be a profitable relationship between you, the property, and the tenant? Or whatever your exit strategies are. To include, you got to have more than one exit strategy.
That's
so,
right.
I mean, there's a lot there, and I don't want to just go on and on. But those are three that just come immediately to mind.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, the thing about it is, you had mentioned this at the beginning of this segment that we, a lot of us has become more than what the original experience was, and in that we've all become friends, we've become business associates.
Right.
I will say, with the exception of like a couple people, Wes and I are still in contact with everybody from that group.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And most of you have all gone on to buy at least a property or two.
That's true. That's right.
You know, and everybody, as far as I can remember, those of you that have bought, you guys are still in business. I mean, you're not hurting or anything like that. So
Yes, we are.
you know, and I think it's just, you know, I think it was a worthwhile endeavor. It was a worthwhile experiment for us.
Well, I think that it was a successful experiment,
Yeah.
and if it's appropriate in the setting, today, after we finish our time on set here, I've got a tenant who's moving up.
Yeah.
And because I know what I've got to do by virtue of having gone through the Investors Roundtable, and even beyond that, some of the conversations and things we've shared about certain things that are going on in the local environment, threats to real estate investors with, you know, property vandalism and things like that. You know, just having created that alliance and having the benefit of those experiences that are not mine but somebody else's are going to help me to get their property occupied quickly, turned around quickly, and making money potentially without even having any downtime. Now, just tell all the viewers this, because of the training that we got with Wes and Matthew, I have never had a vacancy that even lasted 30 days.
Well, you may be giving us too much credit for that. I mean, you did do a good job with your property. I did see one of them, and so, you know, I think you've done a good job staying on top of, you know, your property. So
Okay.
I think that's, you know, I think that part of it comes from you. Now, also on a different note, what I wanted to say is, you know, even though we were tough on you guys, I think what we did was we did ask permission.
Yes.
So you guys gave us permission to do this, you know, so we asked for your trust to do this. And, you know, and so that's all you can ever ask for, when someone gives you the permission to do something, you know, for the greater good.
There were a couple of times I had to remember that I gave you permission. I mean, you got, now, it was, and all of us can relate to, you know, watching somebody else getting chewed out or something like that and thinking, gosh, you're glad that's not me. And I have to say that there were only a couple of times when I was at the other end of the stick. I was one of the good students, I guess. From
Yeah,
the
you were.
standpoint, but,
He was. Teacher's pet.
But there were a couple of times when when I say it felt personal because when you disagree with somebody's point of view, the other side of that has got to be that I am the student, they are the teacher, and that they're telling me this because, yeah, there might be more than one way to view this, but that the reason you have to take into account is the fact that they are the teacher and you are the student, and just accept that for the moment in the here and now as their point of view with absolute respect. And like I said, there were a few times that I didn't agree, but because I had a different way I looked at it, but I could certainly respect how you looked at it, and I accepted that.
Well, I appreciate
that. By virtue of the point that you made very clear that the permission was granted.
Okay. Well, if we wrap up this segment, Tony, are there any parting comments or words you would like to discuss on the
I do want to ask you a question.
Okay.
And the question is, I appreciate the fact that you invited me to be here, and I look forward to being back and sharing with all of you out there. But, you know, is this leading somewhere?
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about the history of the Investors Roundtable. You know, a lot has changed in real estate.
Yes.
In the past 3 years.
Well, it's funny you mention that because Wes had the same question. You know, in between the segments, there has been a little bit of time. He asked me, okay, well, why are we talking about the Investors Roundtable? The Investors Roundtable was, in looking back from my perspective, I thought it was a successful experiment. I had a great deal of fun and fulfillment. And I've learned that a lot of my business projects, I don't do it just for the money. I do it for the fulfillment of it.
Yes.
Now, of course, there's a money piece to it, of course. And like I had to increase the fees for all you guys because it was just getting ridiculous. It was just, I just couldn't cover things. But I guess this is in my small way of putting it out there that if you viewers are interested in Investors Roundtable concept and perhaps you would like to be held accountable in a very hands-on, in a very hard-hitting, direct way, There is a possibility of the revival of Investors Roundtable.
Wonderful.
And because I have had emails. I mean, the website still exists, and I've just never taken it down. I could take it down.
Right,
I've
right.
thought about it many, many times,
Uh-huh.
but I would just never put it to bed. I would just never kill it. It just sits there. So, I mean, at least at the time of this recording, it's still the same content from 2007, with the exception of an updated picture of myself. It's just kind of sitting there. And so people do call, people do email. It says, we're going to do the investors, when can I attend to the next meeting? And I say, well, the meeting stopped at the end of 2007. We're not meeting anymore.
Well,
so that's kind of where it's at. So
yeah.
I guess this is I'm devoting an episode to kind of recount what happened, but also maybe put it out there. If you're interested in Investors Roundtable, email me, and we'll see what we can do.
Can I throw in another comment?
Sure, go for it.
Another good reason for anybody out there to consider what Matthew just offered, and that is that a lot of what you may have read or may have learned or thought about prior to 3 years ago, I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but it has changed dramatically.
It has. There have been a lot of learning lessons that never made it into the book.
Yes.
And certainly not at the roundtable at that time.
And
Yes.
we have all lived through that. We got into real estate investing successfully, mind you, right at the 2-minute drill, so to speak, in the fourth quarter of a game that was a whole new season right after that.
That is true. That is true. You guys got in really at the peak.
Yeah. So from the standpoint that because of our good training and good graces, I'll also say we've survived.
Yeah.
But I think there are a lot of lessons that we're applying now going forward, because this is the best time in history to become an investor.
Yeah.
But so many people, because they're not equipped, they're not trained, they're not skilled, are missing out on what might be the halcyon days to get into this adventurous industry. So I would love to be able to extend the benefit of my experiences, certainly coupled with what you and Wes have, to get you into the game.
Well, I think that if that day comes, wonderful. But for the here and now, you'll be able to get to hear Tony's perspective as becoming a seasoned investor and living also the turnkey investor style of investing on the future episodes. So, Tony, thank you for joining us in this particular episode, and we'll see you in our next video. Thank you.